Week 8, there's no crying in fantasy. We are back. Sean, what's going on?
In life, I'm doing pretty great. But, if we're talking football, I'm probably not doing as well as you, my friend. You being a Eagles fan, dominating the Dolphins on
6-1.
6-1 on Sunday Night Football. And then, I go to the Saints game last Thursday, and, that was a whole shit show itself.
Was it good?
It was actually like, I was just in shock how bad it was, honestly. It was like that bad.
So before we get started, was it that you guys looked that bad, or was it the Jags looked that good?
It was certainly we looked that bad. I mean, the Jaguars weren't doing anything special. That defense, wasn't anything special. Trevor Lawrence, he was killing us on the ground, which I was kind of surprised with his knee and all. But other than that, it's not like he was picking us apart. Sure, we gave up that big play towards the end with Kurt. But, something's got to give when, your defense is constantly going on the field and your offense is not putting up any points to, contradict what the defense was doing the whole time. So it's bad overall. Derek Carr has been a disappointment. Coaching's awful. I blame this on coaching. If we had better coaching, Derek Carr wouldn't look as bad. We would be a better team. But it is what it is. We move on to the next week. NFC South is bad.
Is it time to put Jameis in?
No, because you look what Jameis did under Pete Carmichael last year, and it's certainly not a fit between the two. Now, if this was a Sean Payton offense, most certainly I'm picking Jameis. But this is not a Sean Payton offense anymore. Maybe Sean Payton ideology, but, this is a different type of play caller, and Pete is probably the most conservative play caller there is in the business. So, Jameis wouldn't. If there's one quarterback that would do well in the Saints offense right now with Pete Carmichael as the offense coordinator, and that's Taysom Hill. I'm sorry. At least, majority of his plays is going to be on the ground, and you're not passing nearly as much. And the dude, every time he touches the ball, it seems like he makes plays. He actually had a good fantasy game. So, just because he could do it all, But, let's go ahead and start with tomorrow's matchup. No buys, by the way. Nobody's on buys. So you don't have to worry about that. So Bills versus Bucks. It's in Buffalo. Thursday Night Football. On Amazon Prime, if you got it. So, interesting matchup here. The Bills' defense seemed to have been struggling the past 3 weeks. Even versus, subpar offenses. They've played Mac Jones, Tyrod Taylor, and Trevor Lawrence. When I was taking a deep dive in this game, this is, in Buccaneers coming off a loss against the Falcons. What's your outlook with this game? You think it's going to be close, or you think it's going to be a blowout here? And what players are you looking at?
I think it's going to be closer than expected. I know everybody expects the Bills to win, but we just saw the Bills implode last week against New England. And we talked about their defense. We talked about their defense not being as good. So this was a key example. I think if you have Bucks wide receivers playing, like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, I think they're going to have a solid game. It really all depends on Baker. Baker's hard to trust, but I think this is a game where he can possibly have some decent outcomes. I'm not sold on Rachaad White, but there was something interesting that happened today. Chase Edmonds was activated.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I'm interested to see how they get Chase Evans involved. Um, from the Bills side, I mean, I think you're playing everybody on the Bills side. Tampa's defense is not great, hasn't been that great. So I think
Good red zone defense, though.
good red zone defense, but I mean, when you look at what they've done as a whole, like they just haven't been a great defense. I think they're like middle of the pack. Actually, no, they're like bottom 5, 6 in passing. So I think Josh Allen has a field day, good bounce back game for Bills, possibly a good bounce back game for James Cook as well. So I'm not scared to start anybody on the Bills right now. And then Dalton Kincaid, this may be his spot.
Now, that's interesting because I was actually going to bring him up because, Dawson Knox, he's out. He might be out for a couple weeks. Who knows? But he's definitely out tomorrow. And I'll go over the stats here. Tampa versus tight ends. Last week, they only gave up 43 yards to tight ends, 8.6 per reception, 7 targets. Now, if you go back, probably the best tight end they played all year would be T.J. Hawkinson, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? They played Minnesota first game of the year against T.J. Hawkinson.
I'll have to check, but you're probably right.
They only allowed 2 receptions for 19 yards. And like I said, last week against Atlanta was the most yards they give up against tight ends all year, which was 43. And they only gave up 1 touchdown to tight ends all year, and that was against New Orleans. So, I mean, do you still start Dalton Kincaid here, although Tampa's defense has been pretty good against the tight end?
I think so. I think you can start Dalton Kincaid with some reservations, but if you need a tight end, we know how weak the tight end position is from week to week. He's the clear and obvious starter where they've been kind of splitting duties between him and Dawson Knox. So I say why not? He should get a few targets. Maybe might get into the end zone. So I feel like there's an opportunity there, and if you need somebody, I think he's a viable play for this week.
He did have 8 targets last week, caught all 8 targets, 75 yards, 9.38 yards per catch. That's pretty good. So if he was able to at least sneak a touchdown in, I think that would make him fantasy relevant. I don't know how the Bills' red zone offense is. I didn't look that up. But, if there's 2 guys that I'm looking at from both teams, and I don't think Chase Edmonds is going to really affect Rashard White. I think you might see Edmonds in the rushing game, maybe help out in the rushing game a little bit more. That's where Rashard White has not been great. I believe he's only averaging 2.8 a carry. But receiving wise, that's where his bread and butter is. And you look at it on the opposite side of the field with Buffalo, James Cook, same way. His bread and butter is the receiving game, and I think those 2 will have big games because ultimately they've struggled against receiving backs. The Bucs allowed Tyler Algier to have 3 for 53 last week, and then the Bills allowed Ramondre Stevenson to have 60 yards on 7 receptions. So, I mean, I think it's going to be the game of those 2 running backs, and if you need to start for running back, you're definitely starting those 2, in my opinion.
If you have better options, I'm holding off on Rashad White.
Yeah, I don't blame you there, but I think he's at least worth a flex play.
Oh, definitely a flex. Yeah, definitely.
Depending who you have, I think James Cook's definitely an RB2 on your team this week.
Agreed.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, Stephon Diggs, he's going to ball out every single week. Of course, you're starting him. Are you looking at Gabe Davis?
No.
He's been struggling.
No, it just hasn't clicked with Gabe. I know we all saw the game against Kansas City a few years ago in the playoffs and thought, he's ascending, and it just hasn't happened. So I'm not if I have Gabe Davis on my team, he's on my bench.
And what is your fantasy outlook on Chris Godwin and Mike Evans? Are you starting Chris Godwin for one? I know you're starting Mike Evans, but are you starting Chris Godwin?
I'm starting Chris Godwin, and for this reason, because they're going up against Buffalo, they're in Buffalo, they will probably be chasing points. So I think there's going to be a heavy pass game for Tampa. So if I have Chris Godwin, I'm starting Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is obviously a start as well. So I just think it's a good opportunity for them from a fantasy perspective to start bouncing back.
And my sneaky start, if you're looking for a tight end to start, you got to look at Cade Otton.
Yep.
And I think that's the guy to start if you're looking for a tight end. The Bills, they gave up 83 yards, 6 receptions last week, 13.8 reception per reception, and a receiving touchdown against New England last week.
Yep.
And they've been giving up about 45 yards, about 5 receptions per game. But that was the only touchdown they gave up to tight ends last week. But like I said, this is a defense that has been struggling without Matt Romano, without Daquan Jones, and without Tre'Davious White. They're allowing 5.6 yards per play since they've been out, which is 24th in the league. So that's some interesting stats there. They only had a success rate defensively, 54.2%, which is 29th in the league. Allowed opponents to convert 53% of their third downs. Watching the Buccaneers earlier this year against the Saints, because that's the one time I've actually watched the Buccaneers. They killed us on third down, and we are a top 5 defense, and they were killing us on the third down rate. Tampa is not that great on first downs, but they live for those third down conversions. They take one play at a time, and I think, like you said earlier, I think it's going to be a closer game than what most people are expecting.
Yep, I agree.
So is there anything else you want to talk about Bills Bucks tomorrow?
Nothing else on this game.
Okay. So Rams Cowboys here. Obviously no Kyron Williams. No Ronnie Rivers. You're just gonna still stick with what? Royce Freeman and
Darrell Henderson.
Which I didn't keep an eye on those two. Which two performed the best?
Darrell Henderson performed the best, and he had the most opportunities.
We said he would.
Yep. If I'm starting somebody in that backfield, it's Darrell Henderson. Like we said, he has the trust of the coaching staff. He's more involved in the passing game. Royce Freeman is kind of like a short yardage back almost. That's how he was kind of played last week. Only got opportunities on the ground. So if you're in a PPR league, not that great. If you're in a standard league, maybe you need a touchdown. Maybe he gets you there. But I like Darrell Henderson a little bit better.
Darrell Henderson. I think Puka is going to have another great game. I should have never traded him on in one of my leagues. Should have never traded him.
I told you.
Which, I've been doing okay without him. I haven't took a severe loss, but it's very clear to me that he's going to end up top 5, maybe top 3 in wide receivers, and he might be even a top 10, maybe even top 5 fantasy player overall this year.
I think he's going to want to be
done.
I think he's going to want to be in a top 10 receiver. I don't know if he's going to crack top 5, but I think he'll definitely finish the top 10 receiver for this year.
Well, I was looking at it. Joey Porter Jr. when he was covering, Puka struggled, but the thing is, Sean McVay knows how to scheme wide receivers. He knows how to put them in spots where he can get yardage versus other defensive backs on the field, which is a great sign. it tells me that Puka can line up anywhere and play any wide receiver position on the field, which, if you're in Dynasty, if you're in a Dynasty league, I think, which I have Puka in a Dynasty league. I didn't trade him in the Dynasty league. I think he's a guy you might need to look at to trade for. And, I don't know how long Matthew Stafford for the Rams is going to be there, but, Puka and Cooper Kupp, those are probably that's going to be the top wide receiver duos for a long time, in my opinion. Let's talk about the Cowboys here. What are your fantasy outlook on the Cowboys versus the Rams?
Ooh, I mean, you're starting all your usual people. CD, you're starting Tony Pollard. I think this is a great opportunity for Dak going against this defense. So if you have like somebody like Deshaun Watson and maybe Dak is out there, which has happened in one of my leagues, I say pick up Dak and start Dak this week. I like the opportunity for Brandon Cooks here as well. I think that this is a good opportunity in the pass game for Brandon Cooks. Rams haven't been that great in the secondary. You just saw what the Steelers did to them. So I say, if you need a wide receiver for this week, go ahead and pick up Brandon Cooks. I think it's a great spot for him.
What about Michael Gallup?
I'm not touching Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup is in that Gabe Davis conversation for me right now. It's like
really was.
You're waiting for the lights to turn on, and they just have never turned on.
And what kind of game are you expecting Tony Pollard to have?
I think it's going to be a solid game. I mean, the Rams' defensive line is pretty stout, but I think that there's opportunities there to get him involved in the pass game. I mean, in a PPR league, you're starting Pollard. So, I don't think that this is a question as to whether you're starting him. It's a question as to whether you think he's going to be effective enough to win the week. Now, that being said, Rams are about middle of the pack in the rush game. They're giving up about 117 yards a game. So they're not all that great, and they will bend. So I say Pollard is in a good spot.
I want to see what Jaylen Warren had versus the Rams.
He had a few catches. He didn't have a lot of rush yards, but he had a few catches towards the end of the game. Najee actually had a pretty good game last week too. I think he got into the end zone and had a few solid rushes. Jaylen Warren 6 for 32 with a rush TD and then 2 targets. I think he had 1 reception.
Yeah, that's actually surprising. It was like Najee finally took control of most of the snap count last week. Yeah, I mean, you're starting Tony Pollard regardless. I mean, there's really nobody I could think of, that's a sneaky play here. You're just starting your normal guys. You're starting CeeDee Lamb. Okay, what about Dak Prescott? What do you think his outlook for this game is? And let's say you have 2 quarterbacks. Hell, Matthew Stafford, Dak or Matthew Stafford? If you had to start, which one?
That's tough. I would still rank Stafford over Dak in this game, just because I like Brandon Cooks, but if I'm comparing the pass game of the Rams with Puka and Cooper Kupp, I just like that side a little bit better. And I think with the Rams, with that running offense, with the run game, you're not going to see Darrell Henderson get a lot of touch. He's going to get touches, but how effective is he going to be? I think they're going to have to utilize and lean on the pass in order to beat Dallas. So I like Stafford a little bit better than I like Dak in this game.
I kind of agree. I just, Dak has been a mystery for me all year. It just seems like they need more of a rushing attack, to balance the offense. And I'm not saying Tony Pollard has been bad in that area. It's just they're not getting the amount of yards rushing as they need. And if I had to pick them, I had to pick the money line here, and I know it's not exactly fantasy football, I might lean towards the Rams at, even at plus 6.5, and I think, who the Cowboys played last game. It was the Chargers, right?
Yep.
I think the Rams are a better team than the Chargers, in my opinion, just because you do have the two wide receivers. Now, the Cowboys, without Diggs, their secondary has been solid, but who besides Keenan Allen, who have they really played?
Yeah.
And they got torched by the 49ers. So I think you're looking at the Rams and you're starting, and maybe even Tutu Atwell. He might even get some, some production off of Cooper and Nakua. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what Tyler Higbee is he a start this week?
I think if you need a tight end, he's a start. Like he's not a must start for me, but if you need somebody, yeah, throw him out there. You know, tight end is just one of those positions right now. It's like you either have like a top 5 tight end, or you're just kind of like looking for matchups. And I think if you need somebody, like this is a solid matchup for him.
Right. I mean, that's about it with this game. We can move on to the next one. Let's see. Minnesota. Is the Minnesota next?
Yep, Minnesota, Green Bay.
Minnesota and Green Bay. Aaron Jones. I think he popped up on the injury report again, right?
Yeah.
Did he practice? I didn't read if he practiced or not.
He was limited.
Limited. He's been injured since week 1, week 2.
Yep.
Do you think he'll ever get healthy enough to even be fantasy relevant this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think my concern is how many games are they going to lose, and is he going to get shut down? I think Aaron Jones is eventually going to take over the backfield again. I think they're seeing that the production just isn't there with A.J. Dillon. I don't know why they continue to feed A.J. Dillon.
He's irrelevant, yeah.
The only reason is if, Aaron Jones just isn't that healthy. So I think as the season progresses, you're going to see Aaron Jones get more involved. I think what we're seeing now is kind of that ramp-up period, especially for a running back that's age 28. It may take a little bit more time than it would for somebody who's like 22, 23 coming off a hamstring injury. So I would just be patient. He's not somebody that I'm starting this week. If I have other options, I'm definitely keeping him on my bench like I did last week, and just see how it goes. Once you see that usage start to increase and the snap count start to increase, then go ahead and put him into your starting lineup.
For sure. And, we just witnessed Kirko Chains ball out on Monday Night Football here. I think this is another game, and I'm not typically a big fan of Kirk Cousins, just in general. But, I expect him to have another good game here against the Packers. In my opinion, I think Jordan Addison will have another good game as well. I think I can't remember where I saw it, but I think he's second in touchdowns amongst wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken. Is that something to be true?
I'm not sure. Not sure.
I can look that up right now. Let's see, because he's been going off. Obviously, Jefferson's been out. He took his spot. I have him in my in one of my leagues. Let's see. Jordan Addison amongst wide receivers. He's third. He's right behind Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs. So
Wow.
it's pretty damn close. That's 6 touchdowns. He's actually tied for second with Stephon Diggs.
Wow.
At 6 touchdowns. DJ Moore at 5 touchdowns, and obviously Tyreek has 7. Tyreek Hill, but you look at Cam Akers. He kind of sort of popped up in this game. What is your opinion on that? Because I picked him up in one of my leagues, and I'm expecting him to start taking the lead role here, especially if you PPR. What's your opinion on that? And What's your direction on Alexander Madison on here on out?
So Alexander Madison trending down, Cam Akers trending up. That's what I saw in this game. I think Cam Akers had 10 rushes. I don't remember how many yards he had, and he got involved in the pass game. I think you are starting to see the coaching staff starting to transition away from Alexander Madison back into that backup role that he was with Dalvin Cook, and now you're going to see Cam Akers start to take over that backfield. I just picked him up in the league as well. He was out there, and I was like, wow, I couldn't believe he was still out there after that game.
I know.
So,
nobody picked him up in my league. And normally, and call me crazy, I wake up at 4 a.m. on waiver wire
the same
day.
thing, yeah.
You got to. Okay, Green Packers versus running backs. Last week they gave up 115 yards, 25 attempts, 4.6 yards per carry. They also gave up 64 receiving yards on 7 receptions, 9.1 per reception against running backs. That was against Denver. So I think, this could be a Cam Akers. And Hill says Madison is trash. It's sad. He was overhyped. And I don't know why. And, I feel bad for him because it's like he didn't ask to be hyped up, and I don't understand why Minnesota would think he was a valuable replacement for Cook.
He's a good backup.
He's a good backup. You're right. He's a good backup. So I think this has good potential for Cam Akers to have a breakout game. Kind of like we saw DeAndre Swift broke out early in the year when he came on. Like, when he first came on and he just blew up immediately. I'm not saying that he's going to have that type of same effect, but I think he might be a notch lower. But the Vikings are starving for a consistent running back. And if Akers can have another solid game, I think you'll eventually see Madison out the fold completely, maybe just on goal line carries or short yardage. And
it's a situation to monitor, and then also factor in that the Vikings don't have a rushing touchdown all season. So
they don't have a rushing touchdown all season.
They're the only team without a rushing touchdown all season. So
that's pretty sad, honestly.
Yeah.
Anyways, anything else to talk about?
Nothing else. Before we move on, there is a viewer question here. Josh says, just traded Komet and Shaheed for Kittle and Rondale Moore. He says it's a 20-man redraft PPR. His roster is Rush, JT, Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, Komet, which is now Kittle, and Jacoby Myers. Was it a good trade? I think that's a good trade.
I think, what you're looking at is Kittle's an upgrade from Komet. And Kittle has been more evolved. He might be even more evolved once Purdy is out with concussion and Sam Darnold, a veteran quarterback. He might start targeting the tight end because that's a security blanket there. Rondale Moore, he's kind of irrelevant there. I like the Kittle side of it just because Komet is so wishy-washy. He'll have a big game one week and then he'll score you absolutely zero the next week. So, and he's a big play guy. He's not going to get you. He's a touchdown guy. You expect him to score a touchdown. Doesn't score a touchdown. He's kind of irrelevant fantasy wise. Rondale Moore, I think he's been pretty irrelevant all season. So, but the trade off there is much better for the Kittle side. So I like that trade. I think that was a good trade for you.
Yeah, I like it. I think Shaheed and Rondale Moore are a wash, and you upgraded at tight end. So good trade.
You also got another question here.
Yeah, so this one says, should I trade? So this is from Super CMB Challengers. Should I trade away Ravens D for Eagles D? I like the Ravens D better, but their playoff schedule is worse. I think so. I would say, and this is not me being biased, I think the Eagles D is better, has better matchups. Their middle of the season schedule is tough. So if you can weather that storm, by all means, go for it. but the end of the season is a little bit better. Ravens being in the AFC North is tough. Yeah, at the end of the season, it's not being biased, so I'm sorry. Um, and I think when you look at the stats between the Eagles D and the Ravens defense, Eagles defense is getting a lot more turnovers and sacks. So if that's what you need from a stat perspective in your on your fantasy league, then I say go for it.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. The Ravens have a tougher end of schedule, but they do play Arizona. So unless Kyler Murray plays, which I don't even expect Kyler Murray to do much if he does play, um, you might want to keep the Ravens defense for one more week. Then they play Seattle, and then they play Cleveland, the Ravens. So, I mean, Deshaun Watson might be out for Cleveland, which surprisingly, PJ Walker hasn't been too bad for Cleveland. You might want to
But
keep him for one more week at least,
but
maybe.
here's what he's saying, and this is what I agree with. Ravens end of season schedule, weeks 15, 16, and 17. Jacksonville,
Right.
San Francisco, Miami. Philly's end of season is Seattle, the Giants, and Arizona. So
Mm.
I like the trade if that's what you're playing for. If you're trying to get a defense that you can hold to the end of the season, definitely go for it. Just know that the Eagles' mid-season schedule, where they're at right now, is super tough. So there may be some weeks where they're not going to get you enough points to carry you from a defensive perspective.
How much? Okay, so from an Eagles perspective, do you think Bayard to trade for Bayard improves his defense?
Definitely, most definitely. I think that is. I can't even say it's a slept-on trade because everybody's talking about it. But when you look at Terrell Edmonds and what he was doing, and no offense to him, but when they played Miami, he was getting burnt in coverage. When they played zone, he was late rolling over to the coverage of Tyreek Hill every pass. I think the team saw it, the GM saw it, and they made that trade the next day. So Byer is definitely an upgrade. I think he's better in coverage, better tackler, better leader in that locker room as well. So I think it's an A+ trade.
I think it would improve the interceptions because the Eagles only have 3 interceptions. That's 27th in the NFL, maybe tied for 27th in the NFL. And so I think that would improve that aspect. Edmonds, I did some research in Edmonds in the past because I wanted the Saints to pick him up in free agency. He's more of a tackling safety. He's more of a box safety. He's
Yep.
not a guy that's going to cover. If you're going to let him cover somebody, it would be like a tight end, or he's not going to do well against Tyreek Hill, Waddle. He's not going to do well. He might not even do well against Cedric Wilson. So I mean, he's a box safety. So I think Bayard's a better fit for Philly, and I definitely think it does improve. And if you think the Eagles, if you think you're going to make the playoffs, and I do agree, they do have a better playoff schedule, go for it. Why not? Because at the end
Yep.
of the day, it is just defense, and I don't think you're taking too much for a risk if you do make that trade.
Defense wins championships.
For sure. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe in fantasy, is that a thing in fantasy? Defensive win championships.
Defense wins championships.
So he says he appreciates. That's no problem, man. So Falcons at Tennessee. Will Levis seems like he might get the start.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. This is going to be one sloppy game, in my opinion. It's going to be another low-scoring game from Atlanta.
I
I
don't
want to
think
talk
so.
about.
I don't
You
think
don't
so.
think so? You don't think
No.
so?
Start your Falcons. Start your
It-
Falcons.
Well, I want to get your opinion on Bijan because Cordell Patterson is getting into the fold now, and Tyler Algier had a solid game last week. I mean, it's taken away from Bijan's value here. What do you think about that?
I think it was a 1 week thing. I think you're going to see Bijan back. Just looking at the press conference for Arthur Smith today and some of the scrutiny that he's receiving, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Bijan in this game. He was a full participant today. So, you know, I got to take it as what it is. If they're saying it was a headache and he wasn't feeling well, that's what it is. You know, I initially thought like, okay, maybe he missed practice or like he was late and this was a benching, but they're adamant that that wasn't it. So, you know, take it for what it is. I think Algier is a great backup, but not somebody I'm starting week to week. Same with Patterson. I think Patterson was just involved for this week. But I like the Falcons this week. You look at what the Titans are doing. They just traded away one of their best defensive players. They are not great against the pass. I think that this is a solid opportunity. They were like, they're very middle of the road defense against the pass. Pretty solid against the run, but Bijan gets involved in the pass game. So if you have Bijan, if you have Drake London, I'm a little bit concerned now because as a Jonnu Smith owner, Kyle Pitts is getting a little bit more involved. How much more involved is he going to be? Is he going to take away from Jonnu Smith? I'm still starting Jonnu because he's still seeing a few targets, but Kyle Pitts is definitely getting more involved now.
Kyle Pitts is getting more involved because, you know, you're starting to, I think Arthur Smith was getting some heat for that. And, like, he should, honestly. Like, you know, Kyle Pitts, he needs to be used like a wide receiver. You know, there's no reason why he shouldn't be on the path to at least get over 1,000 yards by the end of the season. Same thing with Drake London, you know, and I think Drake London, this could be a big game for him. He's been solid the last couple of weeks. Ritter, I don't know about Ritter. He had 3 fumbles last week.
Yeah, it was a rough week.
Golly. But he had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. He only had 13.8 points, though. So, I mean, Ritter might struggle. I don't know. You may think it's a high-scoring thing. I think it's going to be – I think both teams are going to score under 20 here. I think if you are going to start somebody that's not named the bigger names, I think you got to start – I don't even know who to start, man. This is such a tough game. I'm starting Kyle Pitts over Jonnu Smith. That's my start.
I'm starting Jonnu Smith over Kyle Pitts.
We'll see how that plays out. Will Levis, man. I want to see how he does. If he does, Vrabel doesn't want to get the total nod. They said Ryan Tannehill might still play. But if Levis plays, I don't know. I like to see what he does. Do you think he could get DeAndre Hopkins involved here? Do you think he'll make any type of difference?
Bench everybody on the Titans. I'm done with the Titans. If anything, I'm starting the Falcons defense. It's just an unknown. We've seen Will Levis in the preseason. Didn't look great. Kind of looked like a deer in headlights. I don't know how much better he can get with no real game action, and this being his first game. There's also the fact that they may use Malik Willis in some situations too, which is kind of odd. I just don't like it. I don't want to start anybody. I mean, the only person you might start is Derrick Henry because he's going to get his touches. They're going to lean on him. Maybe Tajay because they might be chasing points. But Tajay is also dealing with a rookie quarterback that doesn't necessarily know how to check down in some situations and may force some things. So I'm not confident in anybody. So start Falcons defense.
Hey, you got a good point there. Start Falcons defense. And if you want, you could try to trade for Tajay. Be a low-cost trade because they might trade Henry. You never know. So, Saints at Colts. So, this is going to be an interesting game. I don't know if the Saints are going to win or not, but Gardner Minshew lost, 39-38 against the Browns last week.
They had 30-plus fantasy points.
Yeah, which is crazy. Pittman went off. So Zach Moss, he was questionable, did not practice today. I think it's going to be the Jonathan Taylor show all day long. I think this is where you might see Zach Moss exit, fantasy relevance unless he gets traded for the
trade him.
If he does get traded, what do you think his best landing spot would be. I think maybe the Ravens.
Ravens possibly, yeah. I really have no clue, like what would be a good fit for Zach Moss right now.
Cleveland.
Possibly, but I think Cleveland has its own problems. like, I don't want to see Zach Moss go to Cleveland, but possibly Arizona, maybe. I don't know. That's a tough situation because like the trade market has already kind of dried up for running backs. I think they had an opportunity to trade them, but I think a lot of teams are comfortable where they are and with their schedule. I mean, their play calls. That I don't know if they want to add another running back right now, and if they do, I don't know if they want to give up a draft pick for one.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, you still got for Cleveland, you got Kareem Hunt, and I don't know how long Jerome Ford's out for, but
it sounds like a 2-week injury.
2-week injury. So yeah, I don't think it's the best landing spot here. Don't start Chris Olave. I don't know. He's been going through it lately.
It's a good spot for him.
It's supposed to be.
This isn't a bad matchup for Chris Olave.
It's not.
Supposedly he is going to play.
Yes.
Everybody knows what happened, but he is supposedly going to play. Indiana is middle of the road defense against the pass. I think it's a good spot for him if you need to play somebody. I have him in like 3 leagues. I'm not sitting him this week. So we'll see what happens, but you just don't feel comfortable starting with some of the stuff that's going on. But he's getting almost 10 plus targets every week and is cracking double digits. That's good for a fantasy starter. So I would say there's not a lot to be fearful of because he's going to get the volume.
It's just unfortunate because it's obviously not a good situation from a team perspective, and obviously his talent's being wasted. He leads the NFL with 67 catches with 0 drops. That's the most amount of catches without dropping the ball. So I thought that was pretty damn good. Jawan Johnson might come back this week, but I don't think it's going to make a difference, especially since Indy is pretty good against the tight end. So I think this might be a Michael Thomas game. I think he's worth a flex, maybe 2 depending on who you have. Kamara, it seems like he's going through an injury bug. He's going to play. He's going to probably have another big reception game. I wouldn't expect much from a rushing standpoint. So, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a very similar game to what it was against Jacksonville. It's going to be, almost to the 30s, in my opinion, maybe 30 apiece. So we'll see how it goes. I think if you're going to start offensive players, start your Pittmans, and Josh Downs, especially Josh Downs, because if we struggle against anything, it's the speed guys. Kurt burned us, It's the speed guys that burn us, the guys that can make plays in the open field, because for how good the Saints defense is, they are a slow defense. They cannot deal with players. Like if we played against Tyreek Hill, I could bet you that he'll probably get close to 200 yards receiving. It's because we just don't do well against guys who can make plays happen in open field. Yep. So, I mean, maybe if you're looking for a streaming quarterback, maybe start Gardner Minshew. It might be a risky play, but after you've seen what he did to Cleveland.
I was going to say, I don't like the matchup against New Orleans, but after what I saw, what he did to Cleveland, anything's possible. So
anything's possible.
I have Minshew in the league. I'm starting him this week because I just don't have any other options.
Right. And you might come out victorious out that. So next game, Pats at Dolphins. The Pats actually looked pretty decent last week.
Yeah.
Not, you know, are you taking what you saw against the Bills with a grain of salt, or because I'm at least starting Ramondre Stevenson, right?
That's the one. That's the only one I would start.
What
And Kendrick Bourne if you're desperate, but
he had like 6 receptions for 64
I
yards.
think he had a touchdown last week too. But Ramondre is the only one that I'm starting out of that pass offense comfortably. And then from the Miami side, I'm starting all Miami. Raheem Mostert was on the injury report today, so that's something to monitor. Maybe it's a Jeff Wilson game. Salvin Ahmed if Mostert can't go. You're starting Reek Waddle if he plays.
Do you think Tyreek Hill plays?
I think Reek. That's tricky. It's a hip injury, and I was reading about Tyreek. He never really misses practice like that. He's always a full go. So when something does pop up, it's something pretty significant to monitor. So I would just say monitor it throughout the week and see what his practice schedule is. But a hip with a wide receiver could be a little bit concerning. Maybe it's a weak injury and they sit him. But that makes Waddle a must play. And then you have, I think Braxton Berrios will probably be the next up in that wide receiver lineup.
Braxton, yeah, I was about to ask it. So if he doesn't play, now the thing is, like, he's third in targets amongst wide receivers for the Dolphins. But if I'm looking at somebody who would be somewhat productive if Tyreek Hill wasn't to go, and I'm looking at Cedric Wilson.
Yeah.
I do like what I see from him from the limited targets and receptions he gets. He was targeted 3 times last week, and he was 2 for 48. He had 24 yards per catch. If you go back, he had 4 targets 2 weeks ago. He caught all 4 targets for 52 yards. So, in my opinion, when he's targeted, he does pretty well. So, I don't know. Like, Braxton Berrios, I feel like, he's on the field more often than Cedric Wilson, but he just doesn't do anything with that snap count.
I look at the profile. I look at the profile of Braxton Berrios and Tyreek. I think in that offense, Braxton Berrios is going to slide into that Tyreek role where he's going to kind of beat like zone coverage and kind of sit in the middle, get open. Cedric Wilson is more of an outside receiver, so it's going to be interesting to see if Tyreek doesn't play. Who does he target more? Is it Cedric Wilson or is it Berrios? Because Cedric Wilson plays on the outside. They take shots on the outside, but it's to Tyreek when he's going long. It's not a lot of, outside big body receiver coverage. It's more of the across the middle, we're going to get you open, and Berrios is that speedy guy that can do that.
Man, I wish River Craycraft wasn't on IR, man. That's my boy, man. But he's been IR for a long time. I mean, what did Jeff Wilson do? Let's see.
Nothing.
He did nothing.
Yeah, it was more Ahmed, but maybe it's the ramp up. So if Mostert can't go, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right, so next game, let's see. We are looking at Jets at Giants. This might be a low-scoring game here. What do you think about that? Jets at Giants.
I mean, we saw what the Giants did to Washington last week. I think the Jets are are more of a tougher team that they're going to face. I'm still starting Garrett Wilson. I'm still starting Breece Hall. That's pretty much it on the Jets. The Giants, it's ugly. And this is a tough game against a tough defense. I don't like any of the Giants pass catchers. I wouldn't even recommend anybody for a flex. Saquon, if you have him, you're probably starting him. So Saquon is there. But I just don't like the matchup at all for the Giants.
I think Tyrod Taylor is, if he plays, I think the Giants become more fantasy relevant. But for some reason, when Daniel Jones plays, I feel like fantasy relevance as far as pass catching is pretty bad. And, I think if Tyrod was to play again, I think you lean heavy to Waller because I believe
Yeah.
he had a touchdown and a couple of receptions. But other than that, like you just said, the Giants, from a fantasy perspective, offensively is not, the greatest. I think you might look into getting the Jets defense here.
Yep.
Um, you know, just like how you would pick up the Falcons defense versus Tennessee. This is, kind of the same exact situation here, in my opinion. Brees Hall, obviously. Zach Wilson, he's been improving every week. I think, he might have a good game here, and he might be worth a start depending, who you need.
Who are you sitting for Zach Wilson? That's the question.
Who am I sitting? I can tell you right now. Let's see.
I mean, like top 12 quarterbacks. Who are you?
Top 12 in fantasy, right?
Yeah, top 12 in fantasy. Who are you sitting for Zach Wilson?
Let's see. Russell Wilson.
Okay.
Because it's going against the Chiefs. That's last time he played the Chiefs wasn't great. I'm sitting Sam Howell, maybe he's 11th. He's going against Philly. I'm starting him over Sam Howell.
I'm starting Sam Howell over Zach.
Really?
Yep.
What about Jared Goff versus the Raiders?
I'm starting Jared Goff.
Starting Jared Goff?
Yep.
Do you think that horrible game for Jared Goff would carry over, though?
I think it was an outlier. I don't. They were at Baltimore on the road, tough place to play, tough defense that has been pretty solid this season. I'm not putting too much stock into that game when it comes to Detroit. I think the Raiders game is definitely a great bounce back. They're at home going against a pretty bad defense. You just saw what Tyson Bagent did to him. So
right,
I'm not sitting Jared Goff to play Zach Wilson. So I think the only one is Russell Wilson.
So you said you would start Sam Howell over Zach Wilson versus the Giants, right? So
yep.
This is Sam Howell versus the Giants last week. Only 10.46 points fantasy. He was QB 23. So I mean, one interception. 2 attempts of rushing, 15 yards. He was 22 for 42. Zach Wilson's not going to throw the ball that much. That's the thing. I don't think Wilson is going to have 42 pass attempts. So let's go back to Zach Wilson's stats. So he's been averaging about 32, 33 passing attempts per game. So, I think he's going to have a better game than what Sam Howell did last week against the Giants. And the thing is, Wilson, is able to run the ball a little bit more, in my opinion, like as far as scrambling ability. So I don't know. I would start Wilson over Howell this week, and I would start Wilson over Wilson this week, in my opinion.
I'm starting Sam Howell because he's going against Philly. Philly's secondary hasn't been great this season. I think that they are number 1 against quarterbacks this season. From
Philly
a perspective, yeah. Mm-hmm. Giving up almost 290 yards a game in the past game. I like the matchup a little bit better. I know it's a division rivalry. Washington's at home. He had success against them.
They already played earlier this year, huh?
Yeah, and he had a lot of success against them as well. So I think that this is just a good matchup for Sam Howell. And also, they're playing a team that they should be trailing, so you will probably get some garbage time points as well.
Well, we'll see. We'll see on that one, and we'll come back to that next week.
Yep.
Zach Wilson versus Sam Howell. Jags at Steelers. Steelers had a great game against the Rams. Jags, I wouldn't say great, but they obviously won against my Saints. So, what is your fantasy outlook for this game? What did Trevor Lawrence had fantasy points wise? Let's see,
20
against the
points.
Saints. Yeah, 20 points.
Yep.
Mostly because of the rushing attempts, right?
Yep.
So outside of the rushing attempts, I mean, he's 20 for 29, 204 yards, one touchdown. I mean, he would have gotten probably like 14 or 15 without the rushing attempts. Kenny Pickett. Let's see what Kenny Pickett was
Kenny
able to
Pickett
do.
had a solid game last week. I think he had
He
2
was
touchdowns.
he actually had a rushing touchdown. Doesn't show that he has a passing touchdown though.
Maybe not because Najee had the touchdown. He had the other one.
He was QB 14 last week.
I will tell you, I like Jacksonville's defense this week.
Yeah.
I think that this is a good start. They've been pretty dominant on that defensive line. On the Pittsburgh side, Jacksonville. I think you're starting Christian Kirk. You're starting ETN. The only question mark there is Ridley. I do think Ridley has a bounce back game. I think he gets more involved. Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson came back, had a good game. I think you see him get involved as well. And then George Pickens, you're starting. From the running back perspective, I do like Jaylen Warren this week. I think the Najee success last week was a little bit fluke. We know that Najee hasn't been that great lately. Jaylen Warren, I think you may see Pittsburgh get down and start to utilize Jaylen Warren in that short passing game.
I think after you're watching Saints versus Jags, I think it's safe to say Jaylen Warren will get those receiving touches. Because, even the Jags were saying, don't let those checkdowns happen all day long. They're just not a team that likes to give up big plays, down the field, in the middle. But the thing is, if you go back and watch the tape, and there's some throws that Derek Carr should have made, and guys were getting open. Guys were getting open, and to the point where Carr wasn't even reading them, wasn't even looking that way. So I think if Kenny Pickett is able to read the defense and not be like Derek Carr, I think he can have a big game. I think he really can have a big game with Pickens and with DJ coming back. He's actually a good trade candidate, in my opinion. If you're looking for a wide receiver in your leagues, he might be even a buy low candidate. I don't think he will go pretty high in trade. So maybe look to trade for him. So is Pat Fairmouth? Is he coming back or not? Is he playing?
He's on IR.
He's on IR. Man, this would be a Pat Fairmouth game for me, but he'd be on IR, of course. But I do like the Jaylen Warren, and I do like Pickens. I do like DJ, Christian Kirk, Ridley. How long are we going to see, Ridley be this irrelevant? How long we got to wait for him?
Not much longer. I think they're going to start scheming for him because he's just too talented of a player. It just takes time when you come to a new offense to kind of get acclimated with that offense, build that chemistry. So I think you're seeing some of those struggles. We all know the talent that really possesses, which is why a lot of people picked him up like second, third round. But you have to really temper your expectations when you have a new receiver coming in to a new offense. He's had a year off as well. So I think as the season progresses, you're going to see him start to get a little bit more involved and them to start scheming for him.
Yeah, I did end up trading him in one of my leagues. I traded him and Josh Downs, and you might not like this trade, but I traded him and Josh Downs for Mari Cooper, uh, Michael Thomas, and you might not like this, but I like the week he had last week, Javonte Williams. But you got to realize I've already got Tyreek Hill, I've already got DJ Moore, I've already got Kenneth Walker, I've already got Eckler. Those are my starters. Um,
I don't like it.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think the Saints did a good job against Ridley last week. I think it was clear that they didn't want him
Right.
to beat us deep. And obviously, that opened up a lot of passing lanes for Kurt, even Ingram. Ingram was a guy that I thought the Saints would shut down. But, Demario Davis was hurt a little bit. So he couldn't really able to cover, that part of the field. Ingram had a good game. But like I said, they just didn't want Ridley to beat us deep. So I don't know, man. I'm trading Ridley. Like I just did. And I just had to get some death pieces. I just had to do it. I just couldn't start Ridley for another week for him to get 0, 1, 2 points.
No judgment. No
You know what I'm
judgment.
saying? Yeah, I just couldn't do it.
No.
So the next game, let's see, Eagles at Commanders.
Yeah, we touched on this. I like Sam Howell. You don't like Sam Howell. I think good spot for Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas as well. We don't have any linebackers that can cover. From Philly, DeAndre Swift, of course. A.J. Brown, big game. I think this is a smash spot for A.J. Brown. They're going to try to get him that record of over 125 games for six games. That would set the record. Devontae Smith, I'm questionable on. I think like if you have him, you probably sit him right now until you see a little bit more production. Dallas Goedert, I think you're seeing him get more involved, so like start him comfortably, and you're starting Hurts if you have him. So,
well, he's the number one quarterback in fantasy right now, if I'm not
right.
mistaken. But it's his health. And they say he's fine. He's not on the injury report, I don't believe. But is his health concerning? You think?
I don't think so. I think one thing that I'm seeing personally is that he's taking a little bit more precaution in his runs. He's getting down. I think he might have had like an injury that popped up during the week or something, but just wasn't significant. Put the brace on, played fine. They've been downplaying it. Like you say, he's not on the injury report. So if he was on the injury report, it would concern me. But the fact that he practiced today, I think he's good to go.
Gotcha. Let's go ahead and move on to Texans and Panthers. I think the Texans had a bye last week, right?
Yep.
I think your starter of the week should be C.J. Stroud.
Yep.
And I think he's going to have at least at the bare minimum 30 points of fantasy. I think he's going to absolutely light up Carolina. And I think this would cause some after effect for Carolina to catch up. And I think you're going to see another big Adam Thielen game, I guess. I know I said that eventually he's going to stop. I do still think that. But you kind of expect it because Carolina is always trailing from behind. Is Miles Sanders playing?
I think so. I didn't see anything on the injury report for Miles Sanders today. But does he play effective and does he get the touches, or is it Chuba Hubbard? I think Chuba Hubbard is the better play right now.
I think if I was Frank Wright, I'm starting Chuba even if Miles Sanders is good to go, and I think you should ride Chuba. And if that's the case, then I think Chuba is worth a flex play.
I agree. Yep.
He's pretty solid fantasy wise, just because he can do it all. Especially in PPR leagues, he's great outside of the backfield. He can even line up as a wide receiver at times.
One thing to monitor, if let's say they lose this game, if Carolina loses this game, do we see Adam Thielen moved at the trade deadline?
That's a good question. I mean, if I'm Adam Thielen, I would want to be moved. I mean, because you're playing this good, and I know the Panthers don't have anybody else to go to. I get that, and he's just getting target feed, but he's using them targets really at an efficient rate, and if he's doing that well, and that should show you how good Bryce Young is
Yeah.
for how bad that team is. That just show you how good Bryce Young is because you're giving it to your best wide receiver, and he knows who to go to every single time. So if Adam Thielen can have that connection already with a young rookie quarterback who's still learning the ropes, just imagine what he can do with, maybe Patrick Mahomes. Even though Rashid Rice is, doing solid, I still think the Chiefs need a wide receiver. Adam Thielen, I don't know. I know that's not the type of wide receivers they typically go for because they like them tall, lean wide receivers. I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to go after. I'm just saying, it's just an example.
Yeah, I think some of the teams to monitor are the Bills, the Chiefs.
That's a good fit.
Yeah. Maybe even Detroit.
With no Marvin Jones anymore, even though he wasn't doing
kind
anything.
of needing that solid second receiver to step up. I don't think
Williams to be that guy, but he's not being that guy.
I don't think Baltimore would make that trade. I don't
No.
think San Fran would make that trade. Not Miami. Yeah, I would say the Bills and the Chiefs are probably the team to look at if the Panthers are going to move off of Adam Thielen.
Yeah, and I like those two destinations.
DeAndre Hopkins is another one to look out too.
Yeah, he's already getting some heat on that. That's actually been being reported.
Yep.
I like Thielen better than DeAndre Hopkins though.
Yep.
So,
all right.
CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, start him. All right, next game. Browns at Seahawks.
Ugh.
Man, it sucks that it seems like Amari Cooper only does well with Deshaun Watson.
I think this is a bounce back game for Amari Cooper.
I hope so. I just traded for him.
He did okay the first week with PJ Walker. Seattle's fourth against wide receivers, giving up the fourth amount of points. I think that this is a good spot for Amari Cooper. I think Seattle's going to be up in this game. They're going to be chasing points. The target should be there for Amari Cooper as well. The biggest question mark, like you said, is PJ Walker, but I think he should be able to get him the ball enough for Amari Cooper to be productive.
Are you starting Kareem Hunt?
Yes, if I have to, yes. I think
RB2.
Yeah, well, why not? Should be involved. It's PJ Walker. PJ Walker doesn't really check down like that, but Kareem Hunt should get enough touches to be effective.
Not to mention, he's a PPR guy, so I think it's a great PPR start. And you switch it over to Seattle. Is Jake Bobo worth a pickup?
No. Do not fall into the Jake Bobo hype.
Because they're name wise, they're loaded at wide receiver. I think he's a good spot pickup if the guys ahead of him are injured. But he's not gonna. No, in my opinion, unless he plays like Puka, in my opinion, he's not gonna take any of those guys' spot. He might take JSN's spot, but that's about it.
No, he's not taking JSN's spot. If I'm playing anybody, it's JSN. If Metcalf is out, but other than that, it's Metcalf and Lockett. and Kenneth Walker.
What's their injury report? Aren't they on the injury report?
What did Metcalf? What was his practice status today?
I didn't even know JSN had a touchdown last week.
Limited practice. Yeah, JSN had a touchdown last week. Metcalf was limited today, so trending in the right direction to play this week. So, I mean, it's really just Metcalf and Lockett that I would trust if Metcalf is playing. JSN if Metcalf is out. And then Kenneth Walker. This is a tough spot for Geno, but like we saw, Minshew lit him up. So, you're still playing the Browns defense. I think they still get, enough points because even with Minshew lighting them up, I think they put up 11 points last week.
How many sacks do the Seahawks give up?
I'm not sure, but their offensive line isn't that great.
And I would say the Colts' offensive line is pretty solid.
It's a little bit better, yeah. They have a better offensive line.
So I don't know. I think it just all comes down if they can block Myles Garrett or not.
Yep, Myles Garrett is going to be in the backfield.
Yeah, and, no matter what. I mean, it just all comes down to that, and like, I think, it sucks because I have Ken Walker. What do you think his outlook is versus the Browns?
I'm still starting Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, you're starting him for sure.
Yeah, he's too productive of a back. Possibly gets into the end zone. He's involved.
JT had a solid game last week.
Who?
Jonathan Taylor. He had a solid game last week.
Yeah. I think Kenneth Walker is going to get a couple of receptions. He's going to get his touches. So he's going to be productive.
I think you said Geno. I think if you have a good replacement quarterback, I think you said Geno.
If you have another quarterback, yes.
If you have another quarterback,
Geno or Zach Wilson.
I like the matchup better for Zach Wilson. I know the Giants. Giants defense. That's kind of what they have been having to rely on. But I don't know. I like Zach Wilson better this week, just because the Jets team morale is on the up, and I think, they're smelling a little blood in the water, and coming off the bye week, I think it would give them more time to, settle in and maybe build more of a rapport offensively. And I think Breece Hall, he's going to have a monster game. So I think that's going to rub off to Zach Wilson's play.
I agree. I would take Zach Wilson over Geno this week.
But yeah, I mean, we could probably move on now to the Chiefs and Broncos. And Broncos. Are you starting Rashid Rice?
Yes. That is a lock for me in all of my lineups. If I have Rashid Rice, he is locked into my lineup now.
Are you taking Javonte Williams? I think he had 11 or 12 points. You taking that with a grain of salt, or do you think that's a step in the right direction?
I am kind of trending down on Javonte because Chase McLaughlin is getting more involved in that offense with Javonte active. I think he's a good start if you have to start him, but I'm just not expecting much. And with Chase getting involved, it's just going to take away touches.
And the Chiefs, Chris Jones, and the Broncos didn't do so well the first time against the Chiefs. So I think you're starting. I mean, the only person you're starting with the Broncos is maybe Sutton.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
I can't trust anybody else on that offense. Jerry Jeudy has been relegated to my bench. He's not touching my lineup until that's another trade candidate right there. Hopefully they free Jerry Jeudy. Let's see what he can do on another team, but he's not seeing my lineup until then.
I think Jerry Jeudy would be a good trade candidate for the Panthers. A young wide receiver, maybe,
They have talked about that as well. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, Ravens at Cardinals. Lamar Jackson having a fantastic game against the Lions. I
I
think
think
he's proven all the doubters wrong.
I think it
Um,
continues this week.
I think it continues. I think you might be able to get away with even starting Odell as a
Mm,
flex play,
Don't
as
do
a
it.
flex.
Don't do
The Cardinals, it got to be one of the worst pass defenses in the league, right?
it. I'm not recommending that, fantasy people.
I,
I'm
I
not.
think I think sooner or later you're gonna have to get him involved because I don't know. You got Safe Flowers, you got Mark Andrews. Has Rashard Bateman been doing anything?
He had a couple catches last week. I think Aguilar had a touchdown. Um, I'm not. I'm not recommending anybody outside of Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. Don't do it.
We'll just wait and see. We'll wait and see how that goes. All right. I don't think you're starting anything from the Cardinals, huh?
Amari DiMercado had a great game last week.
He did. He did.
It
Over
was a,
DeAndre Ingram.
yeah, it was a surprise. Keontae Ingram wasn't involved. I think in a deeper league, if you need a flex, DiMercado is a solid option. Marquise
Do we
Brown.
do we see Kyler Murray play?
I don't
Or he's
know. I think he had a full practice today. I don't know if he plays this week, but I think eventually he's going to be in the lineup. I did pick him up in one of my leagues where I need a quarterback just in case he does play in a couple of weeks. But Marquise Brown is going to be involved. Trey McBride because Zach Ertz is on the
Trey
IR now.
McBride. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
So
That's a good.
if you need a
Mhm.
tight end, Trey McBride is out there. I think that's really it on the Cardinals. And then Baltimore running backs, it's really just Gus Edwards. That's it.
No Justice Hill, huh?
He fumbled last week. Has been a little bit involved in the pass game, but hasn't cracked double-digit points in PPR yet. So I would kind of lay off with Justice Hill.
Yeah, and the only reason why I'm saying OBJ, and you could probably just have him on your waiver wire until he starts blowing up, but they paid the man what $17 million, right? Like for 1 year, right? That's just a waste of money to me, and eventually they're gonna have to get him involved, especially if they trending up in the passing game. I mean, Lamar threw it 45 times? He threw it 45 times? Was it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
around there. Yeah,
that's crazy. So
but
Bengals. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
hold on.
Go ahead.
Money does not matter when you're winning. So just because you paid the guy all that money, they are winning right now. They're 5-2, leading the division, and they are winning the way that they win. There is no need to force the football over to OBJ, and he just can't stay on the field. Like I'm not taking my chances on putting OBJ in my lineup, and he can't make it through the game.
Maybe so. I mean, I think he's worth a pickup though. I think you just monitor it. Just monitor it. Just monitor it. Bengals at 49ers. Bengals at 49ers.
Start everybody.
For
Brock
both
Purdy's on.
teams.
Brock Purdy got a concussion, so he was on the injury report. There is a possibility that he does not play this week. That is concerning for all Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk owners. You will probably get a heavy dosage of Christian McCaffrey. We saw that he is healthy. He played the whole game last week. But that is concerning that Brock Purdy had a concussion, didn't practice, and possibly a sneaky play for the Cincinnati defense this week.
I was about to say I liked Cincinnati's defense. And I do like everybody for the Bengals offensively. Do you like
Except
Joe Mixon
except T. Higgins.
except T. Higgins?
No, I actually think that this may be the week for T. Higgins to have a good game, but I just don't want to risk putting him in my lineup because I can't trust him. I think Jamar Chase has a big game. Joe Mixon, he might be okay going against that run defense, but I think Jamar Chase is the one. I think Burrow has a good game. Possibly Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins, may show something. We'll see. But I just can't start him right now.
I think you've seen the game from Jordan Addison had against the 49ers, and I think Jamar Chase is going to eat. I think he's just going to absolutely eat.
I agree.
And
7-11.
I think Joe Burrow, right behind CJ Stroud, is gonna. I mean, you're gonna start Joe Burrow no matter what. But I'm just saying I think quarterback wise, behind CJ Stroud, he'll have the second best game amongst quarterbacks this week in
Coming off the
fantasy
bye.
terms.
Coming off the
Coming off
bye,
the
too.
bye, fresh. So I mean, 49ers, man, they're kind of declining. I still think Christian McCaffrey, he's gonna obviously, even with that oblique injury, you can tell it was still hurting him, but he ended up going through it as the game went on. He's still going to be the voice of the offense. And if you shut him down, that's it. That's it for the 49ers.
Debo actually might not play because I think they said he was going to be out about 2 weeks with that hairline fracture.
Damn.
So it may be a smash spot for Kittle because you got a backup quarterback possibly playing. They may just be targeting short intermediate routes. So Kittle may get a lot of looks.
For sure. Bears and Chargers.
Fire up Tyson Bagent.
Tyson Bagent, huh?
Fire up Tyson Bagent.
Man, Tyson Bagent with his first NFL dub last week. What do you think about that?
Fire up Tyson Bagent. You heard it here first.
Just fire him up.
Going against the worst pass defense in the league, the worst secondary. They have been lit up by every quarterback that they have played. I think that this is just an opportunity for him to take the reins and take the lead on that quarterback position. DJ Moore, I think, is going to have a big game. This is a Cole Kmet spot, I think, as well, where he didn't have any looks. He didn't have any targets, any catches last week. So I think
Foreman. You think Foreman continues his success this week?
I think Foreman leads that backfield with Roshan Johnson coming back, but Roshan's going to be involved in the pass game. But Tyson Bagent, fire him up.
What's your opinion on Austin Eckler?
I think he's in that ramp up period. Once again, another older running back coming off of a hamstring injury. It's like Aaron Jones. It's going to take some time for it to like him to really kind of heat up. But I think in the second half of the season, you'll see him kind of take off. Chargers, I just don't know, man. Like, and from a fantasy perspective, you're playing everybody. You're playing Keenan Allen. You're playing Eckler. This could be a great spot for Gerald Everett.
I was about to say him. He's had touchdowns in the past 2 games.
Josh Palmer. Bears defense has kind of looked, like worth mentioning a little bit, but I just don't see them being effective against the Chargers this week because Chargers do have a great offense. But from a fantasy perspective, Tyson Bagent, you heard it here.
Well, if you have Tyson Bagent in your waiver wire, go pick him up. Okay. Right before we go to the last game, do you think if Bagent wins another game? Okay, first off, how many games is Fields out? He's out for another week or 2?
Yeah. 2 weeks.
He's probably not going to come back after New Orleans.
No.
Or you think he's going to come back for New Orleans?
I think he's going to come back after New Orleans.
So if you think Tyson Bagent goes 3-0, do you think he takes the job from Fields?
It's not happening. I don't think that they're going to beat the Chargers, but I think that this is fantasy and real life are not the same. I think this is a great opportunity for him from a fantasy perspective. I don't think they win the game. Ultimately, I think when Fields comes back, he's going to be the starter. But Tyson Bagent is in a spot right now where you saw what they did to Vegas. Vegas's defense is not great. They're facing an even worse secondary this week in a game where they should be trailing and should be having to play catch up. Tyson Bagent's in a great place. I think all of your Bears receivers from DJ Moore to Cole Kmet are probably in a good place. I think Roshan Johnson is in a great place this week because he's going to be the pass catching back. Deontay Foreman is not a pass catching back. So if you are starting Deontay Foreman, just beware that if they do get behind, you may not see a lot of Deontay Foreman.
Right. And yeah, because I would expect Roshan to overtake Foreman at some point because they like Roshan a lot.
We got a question real quick, and it's about Chicago. It says, I have Stroud and Fields. Should I pick up Kyler? That's a great question.
He says he would have to drop Fields.
Yeah, he says I would have to drop Fields. I don't think so. I don't think you
drop Fields. You're not dropping Fields
for Kyler. No, I think he comes back and he's still going to be a starter and he's still going to be productive.
Now, if you have an IR spot and you're able just to stash Fields on your IR spot and then pick up Kyler, I don't see why not.
Yeah, but I'm not dropping Fields for Kyler because I don't know what I'm going to get with Kyler.
Exactly. I agree. I'm not dropping Fields for Kyler or Stroud.
Yeah. So definitely not Stroud.
Right. All right. So last but not least, Monday Night Football, Raiders at Lions. Is Montgomery coming back, or he's still on IR? He's on IR.
I don't think he's on. Is he on IR? I don't think he's on IR, but he's not coming back this week. Possibly another week or so. Jahmyr Gibbs had a great game, so they're playing Jahmyr Gibbs. Amon-Ra St. Brown, of course. Like I said, Jared Goff, I think this is a Jared Goff game, bounce back game at home Monday night. Jameson Williams, 6 targets, no catches. I am not starting. Oh yeah. Deontay this week. No way I'm touching D-Hop. D-Hop is on my bench.
Yeah, you're not starting Williams for sure. I mean, I have him on my bench, but I've considered dropping him this week. But I'm just waiting for that breakout game from Williams, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But with Montgomery still out, Craig Reynolds banged up, I think this might be the first week you might see Gibbs show some actual fantasy relevance to what he was predicted to do this week, in my opinion. Played 65 snaps last week, 86.7%, third amongst running backs in week 7. So he handled 24 of the 24 backfield touches, rushing for 11 for 68 and a touchdown. Had caught 9 out of 10 targets for 58 yards. That's what we've been expecting him to do. Yeah. And you've seen what the Bears and Tyson Benjit, like you just were preaching, did to the Raiders last week. I expect Gibbs to have a great game. I think he'll have at least 1 touchdown. I think he would be a start of the week candidate for me. What do you think?
I like it. I think, like I said, this is the Lions game to win. I think they're going to be up. They're going to be running the ball. Gibbs is going to be involved not only on the ground but in the air. I think anybody you have, Sam Laporta, start him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, start him. Gibbs, start him. Jared Goff, start him. On the Raider side, I like the Detroit defense this week as well.
I do like Detroit's defense.
Raiders
I don't like Josh Jacobs though. You almost got to force to start him, but it's just like I don't know, man. Like if I know he's gonna struggle, why start him? And I know it's not his fault, but
Detroit is one of the toughest teams against the run. The only thing I can see with Josh Jacobs is he gets involved in the pass game later on in the game. If they're trailing, which they probably will be. Only person on the Raiders I like and can start confidently is Jacoby Myers, of course. Devontae Adams, we've seen his frustration. Another possible trade candidate by next week. We'll see. They've already said that they're not giving him up, though, so it kind of sucks for fantasy, but they just haven't been able to get him involved, and you can see the frustration boiling over. But Jacoby Myers is my only start on the Raiders.
which he's been balling every single week, no matter who the quarterback is.
Yep.
And I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, that does it.
That pretty much does it. I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, there's no crying in fantasy. We still went an hour and 30 minutes, even though we thought it's going to be a little shorter this time. But that's okay, man. It's okay.
We are giving the people the knowledge that they need in order to win their weeks. You can't cry about that, dude.
You can't cry about it.
You can cry if you lose, but it really doesn't matter because there's no crying in fantasy.
No crying in fantasy.
Sean, that's a wrap for us. We're on week 9.
We'll come back, and I want to first thing next week. We're gonna touch down, and we're gonna talk about Zach Wilson. First thing next week.
Let's talk about Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson.
Is Zach Wilson a top 10 quarterback next week?
Hey, I think so. We'll see. We'll come back next Wednesday. Maybe next Wednesday. We'll see.
Wednesday or Thursday. We're gonna see if Zach Wilson was a top 10 quarterback next week.
Yes, sir.
All right, Sean. All right. There's no crying in fantasy. We are on to week 9. Best of luck to everybody on your games.